Now, as of the time of recording, Pearce has won an opportunity on the January 8th edition of SmackDown in 2021 to face Roman Reigns, the Tribal Chief, for the Universal title at the Royal Rumble match. The man is the unnamed authority figure for all of WWE at the moment, and you must be thinking, what on earth are they doing? Well, trust me, I felt the same. But an interesting tidbit, if he does indeed end up having that match in WWE, it won't actually be the first time he steps in the ring for the company to have a match. Isn't that interesting? I think it is. And on top of that, I think there might be a few more who also fit the bill. With that in mind, I'm Adam Nicholas. This is What Culture Wrestling, and these are 10 wrestlers who go back further than you think. Number 10, Tommaso Ciampa. Now, back in 2005, you may recall Ciampa having a run on the main roster as that very cartoonish, I think it's fair to say, lawyer who was part of the ill-fated feud between The Undertaker and Muhammad Hassan. But a lot of people don't seem to recall the time when he actually had a match in WWE around the same time against Jamie Noble on WWE Velocity. At the time, this was an opportunity for WWE to make Jamie Noble's character a little bit edgier than the hillbilly he'd been portraying at the time, so he came in all guns blazing and was full of some of the heaviest hits you can see around that weight class. Tommaso Ciampa, of course, was the poor bugger on the receiving end, up to the point where Jamie Noble hit him so hard with the chop, the announcer said they wonder if he's got a license for it. And yes, Tommaso Ciampa did spend the entire match getting his arse kicked, and it was a bit of a maximise your minutes squash match for Jamie Noble, which ended with Ciampa getting choked out by the wee man. However, Ciampa did still manage to show his ability to sell as a babyface, and probably learned a thing or two from Jamie Noble for the rest of his career too. Number 9, Rob Van Dam. Now, recently you might have seen some footage doing the rounds of former WWE star Matt Byrne, who had a burgeoning career in the company. No, he didn't. That is a lie, because Rob Van Dam is Matt Byrne, and he was the man who was having a squash match against the Mountie back in the 90s. And importantly here, you would barely be able to recognise the man because he looked like this. And the reason he looks like that is because Van Dam figured he'd go and be a squash guy for WWE, be a jobber, get his ass kicked and earn $150 rather than try and work the indie scene and get paid $35 a match. Makes sense really, but he didn't want to be recognised in the future because he was already starting to get traction as Rob Van Dam. So as he says in the Instagram post, he wore his shirt inside out, he wore blue trunks and his hair down. I mean, when have you ever seen Rob Van Dam with his hair down, apart from when he's getting his ass kicked and it comes out of the ponytail? I mean, you would not be able to recognise him. He's done a pretty good job. But one person who did notice everything he was wearing, unfortunately for him, was Gorilla Monsoon backstage, who apparently was furious with Van Dam's clobber in general and said he ought to kick his ass for wearing what he was wearing. Number 8, Keith Lee. Now, this one is further back than you think, unless you've had the pleasure, of course, of watching Keith Lee's WWE 24 documentary on the network. Because in that documentary, Keith Lee reminisces about the time that he was a security guard who got his ass handed to him by Vince McMahon, Triple H and Shawn Michaels as they stormed towards the ring to get Cody Rhodes, Randy Orton and Ted DiBiase in the build-up towards WrestleMania 25. Lee would unfortunately be on the receiving end of a forearm from the WWE chairman, which he immediately dropped to the floor for. I mean, you sell for the boss of the company, am I right, lads? And then on top of that, Triple H picked him up and chucked him into a barrier, the same one he would probably end up knocking Adam Cole over in a few years to come. Number 7, Ivar. Now, this here is a picture of local talent Todd Smith, who would have a few defeats in WWE back in his very, very early days. And he looks, for all intents and purposes, like, you know, an archetypal professional wrestler. Clean cut, in the singlet, hair slicked back, ready to rumble. What he doesn't look like, though, is one half of one of the most evil, badass tag teams on the planet in the form of War Machine, who may or may not end up going to WWE, who may or may not end up being a Viking Experience and or Raider, I guess. But yes, believe it or not, this is in fact Ivar of the War Raiders, a very young Ivar, I think we can all agree here, and this comes from a 2006 losing effort against Sylvester Terkay on SmackDown. He would also have a few other matches months earlier against the likes of Doug Basham, who he would also lose to. But yes, I think we can all agree he's quite a way away from becoming Ivar in WWE. But I can't decide. What do you think? Beard or no beard? Thoughts in the comments down below. Number 6, Eric. And speaking of Viking Raiders and or experiences, we have Eric, who's next up on this list, who also featured in a WWE ring, also on SmackDown, also in 2006. His match, however, as Raymond Rowe, was against Mark Henry. He didn't get the win, but he also didn't really get Mark Henry over, something that wouldn't happen until he started that Hall of Pain gimmick. Nevertheless, Rowe did put in a good shift against Henry, and it was an impressive squash match, but ultimately not enough to get him signed until over a decade later in NXT. Number 5, Ricky Starks. Now this one's a current favourite on the old YouTube algorithm, maybe because Ricky Starks is hot stuff. But either way, Ryback putting arena worker through table has over 2 million hits on YouTube since it was posted 7 years earlier. Imagine if WWE knew just how good the talent was who was actually going through the table. But no matter how good or how sexy or how excellent Ricky Starks is as part of Team Taz these days in AEW, this poor bugger was getting chucked through a table in catering after a fairly non-altercation with the big guy Ryback. I guess he was pretty hungry, and I guess he figured he wanted to put someone through a table. Feed him more, etc. Number 4, Perry Saturn. Now, years before Perry Saturn was beating the crap out of poor Mike Bell in that squash match we all remember for all of the wrong reasons, he was called Peter Mott's, and he was the one getting an ass kicking during the time when Tatanka was running through an undefeated streak. And it's fair to say Saturn's 1992 stint with WWE didn't get much better as it went along. After that, he would take a beating at the hands of the Legion of Doom, and he wouldn't see another WWE television appearance until ECW turned up on Monday Night Raw in 1997. Saturn would, of course, end up joining WWE full-time though in 2000 as part of the Radicals, moving across from WCW. The promise was there and they had a pretty decent start, but unfortunately we all know Saturn's career will be remembered for 2 things in WWE: the Mike Bell incident and, of course, Moppy. Number 3, Doink. The brilliant bastard that is Doink the Clown made his WrestleMania debut at the 1983 installment of The Show of Shows. However, the man underneath the clown makeup had already wrestled on the grandest stage of them all before. Wrestling then as Matt Bourne, the future circus psychopath, was at WrestleMania 1 to do the honours for Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, after only really being with WWE a couple of weeks after agreeing to do jobs for Vince McMahon. He would work for the company until 1986 before leaving to do stints in World Class Championship Wrestling and World Championship Wrestling before finally coming back to WWE in 1992 to work for Vince McMahon as the most divisive clown since The Fiend. Number 2, the Hardy Boys. Now, who doesn't love a 1990s Hardy Boys squash match? If you haven't seen any of them, go and find them because they are highly entertaining. Just to see these two in a WWE ring back then is fantastic. And they're not on this list because, you won't have heard of them. You most definitely will have. They're on this list because of how far back they actually go, all the way back to 1994, a full year before they would actually turn up at King of the Ring 1995 as the Guards of the Gate. I mean, look at those outfits. Absolutely sensational stuff. But back in 1994, sporting a crew cut and some good arms, I think we can all agree, Matt Hardy, at just 20 years of age, was wrestling the maiden member of the $1 Million Corporation, Nikolai Volkov, obviously a losing effort on an episode of Monday Night Raw. And just days later, 16-year-old Keith Davis, also known to you and I as Jeff Hardy, was getting squashed by none other than Razor Ramon, also on Monday Night Raw. Wrestling under his real name Jeff Hardy, however, he did actually have some matches that would probably be considered to be dream matches these days against the likes of 1-2-3 Kid and Hakushi, as well as some very predictable squash matches against King Kong Bundy and Jim Neidhart. And number 1, Adam Pearce. Yes, that's right, Scrap Daddy himself. Adam Pearce is the man who tops this list, surprise, surprise. The man who started this list, surprise, a goddamn prize. And I can't even imagine how massive the hits on his Wikipedia page were after he turned up as your new number 1 contender for the Universal Championship that will be happening, as of this recording, at the Royal Rumble 2021. Now, yes, as it stands, Adam Pearce is, of course, an unnamed authority figure on both Raw and SmackDown. The guy doesn't even have a title, pretty much, is where he's at. And yet, he finds himself in this match. Why, I hear you cry, when they could have used Shinsuke Nakamura? Well, let me tell you why. Because the man has got some wrestling pedigree. Now, to cut a very, very long story short, Adam Pearce has had a great and fruitful career. It just took place outside of a WWE ring. The man has wrestled over for Ring of Honor, for NWA, and over in Japan as well. And many people consider him to be one of the greats of the North American independent wrestling scene. Adam Pearce is no slouch by any stretch of the imagination. However, he does also have previous, as mentioned earlier, in a WWE ring too. That's right, the potential match against Roman Reigns would not be the debut for Adam Pearce, or maybe it would be as Adam Pearce, but as Adam O'Brien, he once graced the WWE ropes in squash matches against the likes of the Nation of Domination, Tiger Ali Singh, and the Truth Commission, no less. I am not saying that Adam Pearce is going to beat Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship, because if he does, I will literally eat the hat that is on my head. But let's face it, nobody in WWE, not Roman Reigns in kayfabe or Vince McMahon outside of kayfabe, gives 2 hoots about Adam Pearce's achievements outside of the WWE. What I am suggesting, however, So maybe don't panic. Maybe, just maybe, Adam Pearce has got a good match up his sleeve against the big dog, and maybe, just maybe, you might enjoy it too. So there you have it then. Those are the 10 wrestlers who go back further than you first thought. Did we miss any out? Of course we did. There's tons of them. Let us know your thoughts about all of them, any we might have missed, in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and share. Hit the old subscribe button if you haven't already. It's free. You can also find the original article for this at whatculture.com/WWE. That's by Michael Hamflett. Should be a good read, and if it's not, give him a tweet and tell him all about it at Michael Hamflett. You can also follow What Culture on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. You can follow me if that's your thing at It's Adam Nicholas, or if you just want some more videos, there should be some just over here. I've been Adam Nicholas. This has been What Culture Wrestling, and I'll see you next time.